My name is Margaret. I am 78 years old, and I am speaking to you from a small town in Georgia, USA. Before I tell you my story, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more interesting stories I will be sharing. Also, tell me in the comments which part of the country you are watching from. Now let's begin. I will never forget the day I found myself locked in a dark, damp basement by the very people I thought would protect me, my own children. Yes, the same children I raised with love, food from my mouth, and tears from my eyes. They turned against me. Their voices echoed above me as I cried out for help. I could hear them laughing, saying, "She has lived long enough. It's our turn now." That was the moment I realized the truth. The people I trusted to protect me were the ones who caused my deepest pain. My heart broke into pieces, and I felt fear I had never known before. But what happened next was even worse. I will come back to that moment. But first, let me tell you how it all began. When I was a young girl, life was not easy, but I grew up with strong values. My mother always told me, "Margaret, no matter what, protect your family and they will protect you." I believed those words like they were from the Bible itself. I grew up poor but hardworking, helping my parents on the farm, and later working as a seamstress to support my siblings. I married young to a man named William, who at first seemed like a dream. He was charming, strong, and always promised to take care of me. But life has a strange way of turning things around. William turned cold as the years went by. He was not cruel with his fists, but cruel with his silence. He left me to raise our children, 3 of them, almost entirely on my own. I poured everything I had into those kids. I worked day and night, patched up their clothes, skipped meals so they could eat, and prayed every night for their future. I kept telling myself that no matter how hard life was, my children would love me back the same way I loved them. At first, it seemed to be true. My oldest, Sarah, would hold my hand and say, "Mama, one day I'll build you a house." My second child, David, used to run to me with little flowers from the field. And my youngest, Lily, never wanted to leave my side. Those little moments were my treasures, the reasons I never gave up. But children grow up, and promises change. Sarah became distant, always chasing money and friends. David began to drink, and Lily was sweet but easily influenced. Slowly, I began to notice that instead of protecting me, they wanted to use me. The bank account I had saved from years of sewing and farming, they wanted it. The house I worked hard to pay for, they wanted that too. And behind their smiles, I could feel a storm brewing. One Sunday afternoon after church, Sarah called a family meeting. She said it was about planning for the future. I didn't know then that this meeting would be the start of my greatest heartbreak. We sat around the wooden table in the kitchen. I was hopeful, thinking maybe they wanted to care for me since I was getting older. But the words that came out of Sarah's mouth froze my heart. She said, "Mama, it's time to sign everything over to us. The house, the savings, the land. You're old now. You don't need it." I laughed at first, thinking she was joking. But the cold stares from David and Lily told me she wasn't. They sat there, waiting, almost like vultures. My hands trembled as I tried to explain. "These things are not just money. They are my life's work. They are for all of us, for all of you, and for your children." But they didn't care. For days after that, I couldn't sleep. I walked the house at night, whispering to God, asking why my own children would turn against me. But the truth was clear. They wanted to strip me of everything, even my dignity. And then one evening I came home from visiting a neighbor, and something shocking happened that I will never forget. As I walked into my kitchen, the air smelled strange, like smoke and gas. The curtains were moving even though the windows were closed. I stepped closer and realized the stove had been left on, the gas hissing into the air, filling the house. My heart jumped. Someone wanted me gone. I froze in that moment, and then I heard footsteps behind me. It was David. He was standing there in the doorway, his face half in shadow, holding a matchbox in his hand. And that's when I realized my nightmare had only just begun. David's hand shook as he held the matchbox, but his eyes stayed fixed on me. For a moment it felt like the boy who once picked wildflowers for me was gone. In his place stood a stranger, my own son, who looked ready to destroy me. "David," I whispered, my voice trembling. "What are you doing?" Please, this is your mother. He smirked, but I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Mama, he said slowly, you've lived your life. You don't understand. Sarah says if we don't act now, we'll never get anything. You'll waste everything. This house, the land, the money, it should be ours now. We can't wait. Tears stung my eyes. My knees weakened, but I forced myself to stay standing. I said, David, I raised you. I carried you when you were sick. I gave you everything I had, even when I had nothing. And this is how you repay me. For a moment, silence filled the room. The gas hissed louder. My heart pounded like a drum. David's thumb touched the side of the matchbox, ready to strike. I thought it was the end. Then suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Lily appeared, her face pale as she realized what was happening. David, she cried, rushing toward him. Stop this. What are you doing? David's face hardened. Stay out of this, Lily. You don't understand, Sarah said. But Lily grabbed his arm before he could strike the match. The box fell to the floor, scattering matches across the tiles. The smell of gas still filled the air, making my head spin. Lily quickly turned off the stove knobs while David cursed under his breath and stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the door behind him. My hands shook as I grabbed Lily's shoulders. My child, I whispered, tears running down my cheeks. You saved my life tonight. But Lily looked away. Mama, don't thank me. Sarah and David, they've changed. I don't know if I can protect you from them again. They won't stop. That night, I locked myself in my room. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching my old Bible, asking God why my children had turned into enemies. I could still hear Sarah's cold voice echoing in my head. Sign everything over to us. I felt like a prisoner in my own house. The next morning, Sarah came by with a smile that chilled me to the bone. She brought a folder filled with papers. Mama, she said sweetly, we don't want to fight. Just sign these papers and everything will be peaceful. I shook my head firmly. No, Sarah. I will not give away my life's work like this. These things were meant for all of you, not just one or two. And they were not meant to be stolen. Her smile faded. Her eyes grew hard like sharp stones. If you won't give it freely, she said in a low voice, then don't blame us for what happens next. Those words echoed in my heart like a curse. The days that followed were full of tension. Sarah kept pushing, David kept glaring, and even Lily, though kinder, seemed torn between me and them. Neighbors began noticing that I looked tired and worried, but I was too ashamed to tell them the truth. How could I admit that my own flesh and blood wanted to destroy me? Then one stormy night, everything changed again. I had just finished praying when I heard noises outside my window, whispers, footsteps, the sound of something being dragged. My heart raced. I tiptoed to the window and peeked out, and what I saw made my blood run cold. David and Sarah were in the yard, digging a hole in the mud with shovels. A deep, wide hole. I couldn't breathe as I realized what it was meant for. Not for trash. Not for planting. But for me. The rain poured hard against the window, but even through the thunder, I could hear the scrape of their shovels. Sarah and David worked in silence, their clothes soaked, their hair plastered to their faces. Every strike of the shovel into the mud felt like a strike to my chest. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from crying out. My body shook as I whispered, Dear Lord, is that hole meant for me? The thought made my legs weak. I sank to the floor by the window, trying to calm my breathing. I couldn't let them know I had seen. Not yet. I had to be smart. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, Sarah leaned on her shovel and looked at David. Even through the rain, I could hear her words. Tomorrow night, she said, we'll finish this. Mama won't fight us anymore. David nodded, wiping the rain from his forehead. It's the only way. She's too stubborn. Then, as if the devil himself gave them strength, they covered the hole lightly with a wooden plank and scattered some branches over it. They left it there hidden. My heart pounded as I realized they weren't going to wait long. The next morning, the house was too quiet. Sarah acted normal, humming as she made coffee. David sat at the table, pretending to read the newspaper. But I saw the way they kept glancing at me, like hunters waiting for the right moment. Lily noticed it too. She pulled me aside in the hallway and whispered, Mama, something is wrong. They've been whispering to each other all night. Please don't stay here alone. I looked into her worried eyes. She was still my baby, the only one with a bit of softness left. But even she seemed powerless against them. Lily, I whispered, holding her hands. Promise me you'll stay close tonight. Don't leave me. She nodded, but her face told me she was scared. That evening, the storm returned, darker and louder than before. Sarah suggested we all eat dinner together, but something in her smile made my stomach twist. The food tasted bitter, almost metallic. My mind screamed at me not to eat more, and so I pushed the plate away. David watched closely, his jaw tightening when he saw I hadn't finished. Later, when the house grew dark and quiet, I lay awake, clutching my Bible under my blanket. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Then I heard it, the soft squeak of my bedroom door slowly opening. My breath caught. I froze, pretending to be asleep. My eyelashes trembled as I peeked just enough to see shadows moving across the room. Sarah and David. They whispered to each other, their figures outlined by the faint glow of the storm outside. Careful, Sarah murmured. Don't wake her. David moved closer to my bed. I could see the gleam of something metallic in his hand. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't a shovel this time. It was a rope. And before I could even scream, I felt the weight of his hand pressing against my mouth. The smell of damp rope mixed with the storm outside as David's heavy hand pressed against my mouth. My heart raced so fast I thought it would explode. I thrashed under the blanket, but his weight pinned me down. Hold her still, Sarah hissed from the foot of the bed. Her voice was sharp, impatient, like she had done this before. Tears ran down the sides of my face, but my cries were muffled beneath David's palm. My body trembled as I fought to breathe. The rope in his other hand brushed against my cheek, rough and cold, ready to bind me. At that moment, Lily's voice suddenly broke through the darkness. Stop it, she screamed from the doorway. The room froze. Sarah spun around, her eyes blazing. Lily, go back to bed. You don't understand. But Lily stepped inside, her hands shaking, her face pale. I do understand. You're trying to kill Mama. What's wrong with both of you? She gave us everything. David's grip loosened for a second, and I took the chance. I bit down hard on his hand. He howled in pain and jerked back, the rope falling to the floor. I rolled off the bed, landing hard on my knees, but I didn't care. I was free for the moment. I scrambled toward Lily, clutching her arm. My voice cracked. Run. Run, my child. But Sarah blocked the doorway. Her face was twisted with rage, her fists clenched. Nobody leaves this room until Mama does what she's supposed to. The storm outside boomed louder, lightning flashing through the window, casting her face in sharp, cruel light. For a moment, she didn't look like my daughter at all. She looked like a stranger, a monster born from my own blood. David, still clutching his hand, snarled, She won't listen. We have no choice. He reached for the rope again. My knees buckled, but I stood tall, clutching Lily to me like a shield. If you harm me tonight, I said with all the strength left in my trembling voice, the world will know. God will know. And you will curse this day until your last breath. For a moment, silence filled the room. Only the storm spoke. I prayed silently that my words might pierce their hardened hearts. But then Sarah's lips curved into a thin, cold smile. Then we'll make sure nobody ever knows. Before I could react, she pulled something from behind her back. Something that made my blood freeze. It wasn't a rope. It wasn't a shovel. It was a long kitchen knife, gleaming in the lightning. The knife glistened as the lightning flashed through the window, and for a second, my knees nearly gave out. My own daughter, my firstborn, the one who once held my hand and promised to build me a house, was now pointing a blade at me. Mama, Sarah said coldly, stepping closer, stop fighting. Just sign the papers, give us everything, and we'll let you live in peace. Otherwise. She lifted the knife higher, its shadow dancing across the wall. Lily screamed, Sarah, please. This is Mama. You can't do this. But Sarah didn't even look at her. Her eyes were locked on me, burning with greed and anger. She's old, Lily. She doesn't need all this. Don't you get it? We're the future, not her. My hand shook, but I stood my ground, clutching Lily tightly. Sarah, I said, my voice cracking with pain. I carried you in my belly for 9 months. I almost died giving birth to you. I starved so you could eat. And now you stand there with a knife, ready to kill the very woman who gave you life. For a moment her hand trembled. I thought maybe my words had reached her. But then her jaw tightened, and her face hardened again. You're weak, Mama. That's why we have to do this. David stepped forward, clutching the rope again, his face dark with determination. Do it, Sarah, he muttered. She'll never give in. The storm roared outside, the wind rattling the windows. My heart pounded so loud I thought they could hear it. I whispered a prayer under my breath, begging God for a miracle. And then crack! The bedroom door slammed open with a force that shook the walls. Standing there was our neighbor, Mr. Harris, holding a flashlight. His face was full of confusion and concern. What's going on in here? He barked, shining the light directly at Sarah and David. Sarah quickly hid the knife behind her back, but not fast enough. The gleam had already betrayed her. David froze, the rope dangling in his hand. Mr. Harris's eyes narrowed. Why do you have a knife in here? And you, what's that rope for? The room went silent, except for the sound of the storm outside. My chest heaved as I tried to catch my breath, clutching Lily tighter than ever. For the first time that night I felt a spark of hope. But Sarah's mind was quick, and her lies were quicker. It's not what it looks like, she said smoothly. Mama's been confused lately. She gets these wild ideas. We were just trying to calm her down. She's imagining things. Mr. Harris looked at me, his flashlight catching the tears on my cheeks. He saw the fear in my eyes. He saw the truth. He opened his mouth to speak. But before he could, David lunged forward, his fist swinging straight at Mr. Harris. David's fist flew through the air, but Mr. Harris was quicker than I expected. With the reflexes of an old farmhand who'd seen his share of brawls, he ducked, and David's punch slammed into the doorframe instead. The crack of bone against wood echoed through the room, and David howled in pain, clutching his knuckles. Boy, Mr. Harris thundered, raising his flashlight like a weapon. Have you lost your mind? Hitting your own mother, threatening her with a rope and knife? I ought to call the sheriff right this second. Sarah panicked. No. Please don't, she cried, stepping forward. Her sweet, lying voice tried to cover the madness. It's not what it looks like. Mama's been confused. Sometimes she imagines things. We were only trying to stop her from hurting herself. I gasped. Lies. My voice cracked as I pointed at them with a trembling hand. Don't believe her, Mr. Harris. They tried to kill me. They left the gas running. They dug a hole in the yard. Look for yourself, you'll see. Mr. Harris's eyes darted from me to Sarah, then to David still clutching his bruised hand. His face darkened as the truth began to sink in. A hole in the yard, you say? Sarah stiffened. Her mask of calm began to crack. Lily burst into tears. It's true, she sobbed, clinging to me. I saw them. They were going to hurt Mama. The room filled with tension, the storm outside pounding like drums of war. Mr. Harris tightened his grip on the flashlight. I'm calling the sheriff, he said firmly, stepping back toward the hall. But Sarah's eyes flashed with panic and rage. No, she shouted. Before anyone could react, she lunged at Mr. Harris, shoving him hard in the chest. He stumbled back, hitting the hallway wall with a grunt. David, fueled by pain and desperation, rushed forward and snatched the flashlight from his hands. He swung it wildly, striking Mr. Harris across the forehead. The sickening thud made my stomach turn. Blood trickled down the side of the old man's face as he collapsed onto the floor. No. I screamed, my voice breaking as I clutched Lily tighter. Sarah stood over Mr. Harris's motionless body, breathing hard, the knife still in her hand. David's chest heaved, the flashlight trembling in his grip. The storm outside wailed louder, as if the heavens themselves were mourning what had just happened. For a few seconds the world seemed frozen. Then Sarah slowly turned her head toward me, her eyes dark and unrecognizable. You see, Mama, she said in a chilling whisper. Now you have no choice. If you don't sign everything over, you'll end up just like him. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. Mr. Harris lay still on the floor, blood trickling from his head. The storm outside roared, lightning flashing across his pale face. I couldn't tell if he was breathing. I clutched Lily tighter, whispering to her, "Don't look, child, don't look." But she buried her face in my chest and sobbed anyway. Sarah's voice sliced through the silence like a knife. "Mama, this is the last time I'm asking. Sign the papers tomorrow or you'll be joining him." David stood beside her, panting, his bloody knuckles trembling around the flashlight. He looked shaken, but he nodded in agreement with her. His eyes flicked nervously between Mr. Harris's body and me, as if realizing they had crossed a line they could never undo. "Sarah," I whispered, my voice hoarse with grief and disbelief, "look at yourself. Look at what you've become. You're standing over a bleeding man, threatening your own mother, holding a knife like a criminal. Do you even hear yourself?" For a split second, I thought I saw guilt flash in her eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by cold determination. "Everything you own is wasted on you, Mama," she spat. "You don't know how to use it. But we do. We deserve it." Lily broke free from my arms, her little fists clenched. "You don't deserve anything," she screamed through her tears. "Mama worked for all of it. You're just greedy and evil." Sarah's face twisted with rage. She raised the knife, pointing it at Lily now. My blood turned cold. "Don't you dare," I cried, throwing myself between them. "If you touch her, you'll have to kill me first." The thunder outside shook the windows as if the heavens were shouting with me. Suddenly, a low groan filled the hallway. We all froze. Slowly, Mr. Harris stirred, his fingers twitching against the floorboards. Then his weak, shaky voice broke through the tension. "I saw everything." Sarah's eyes widened in shock. David cursed under his breath. Mr. Harris struggled to sit up, blood streaking his forehead. He pointed a trembling finger at Sarah and David. "The sheriff will know. You're both finished." Panic flashed across Sarah's face. She turned to David, her voice frantic. "We can't let him leave. He'll ruin everything." David's chest heaved. His hand tightened around the flashlight. And before I could scream, he raised it high, ready to strike Mr. Harris again, this time to finish the job. David's arm lifted high, the heavy flashlight glinting in the storm's glow. My throat tightened and a scream ripped out of me.
"No, David.
Don't you dare." I lunged forward without thinking. My hands grabbed at his wrist with all the strength left in my frail body. The veins in my arms burned as I tried to pull him back, but his muscles tensed against me. For a moment, I felt like a sparrow fighting against a hawk. Mr. Harris lay groaning on the floor, helpless. His eyes widened as he saw the weapon raised above him. He whispered, "Please don't." His words trailed off into weak gasps. "Let go, Mama." David snarled, his spit flying as he pushed against me. His face twisted with rage, his teeth clenched like a beast cornered. "You don't understand. He'll destroy us all." But I held tighter. I thought of all the nights I stayed awake for him when he was sick as a boy. All the times I stitched his torn clothes. All the sacrifices I made so he could grow into a man. And now here he was trying to kill. "David," I cried, my voice breaking. "You are my son. Don't throw away your soul like this." The storm cracked outside, lightning filling the room with blinding white light. For a split second, the sight of his mother's frail arms wrapped around his wrist seemed to weaken him. His grip faltered. The flashlight wobbled. Then suddenly, Lily darted forward. With a scream that ripped through the thunder, she kicked the flashlight out of his hand. It clattered across the floor and rolled under the dresser. David roared in frustration, spinning on her. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. "You little brat," he shouted, raising his fist. Before he could strike, Mr. Harris, bleeding and trembling, reached out and grabbed David's ankle. It wasn't strong, but it was enough to make him stumble. David crashed hard onto the floorboards, groaning in pain. Sarah shrieked, her knife still clutched in her hand. She lunged at me in blind fury, the blade flashing. "This is your fault, Mama. You've ruined everything." I barely had time to react. The knife came so close I felt the cold steel graze my skin. And then bang! The front door downstairs slammed open. Heavy boots pounded against the wooden floor. A deep voice shouted over the storm, "Sheriff's Department. Is everything all right in here?" The thunder rolled outside as the sheriff's voice shook the house. Sheriff's Department. Who's in here? Sarah froze mid-lunge, the knife still clutched in her trembling hand. David scrambled up from the floor, panic in his eyes. Lily clung to me, her tiny body shaking like a leaf in the wind. For a moment, silence swallowed the room. Then the heavy boots grew louder, closer, until a tall figure filled the doorway. Sheriff Collins, a broad-shouldered man with a gray beard, swept the beam of his flashlight across the scene. His eyes landed first on Mr. Harris, bloody and groaning on the floor. Then they shifted to Sarah, her knuckles white around the knife. Finally they rested on me, frail, trembling, and clutching Lily like my last shield. What in God's name is going on here? His voice thundered louder than the storm. Sarah was quick. Too quick. She forced a trembling smile and dropped the knife behind her leg, trying to hide it. Sheriff, she said, her voice honeyed but shaking. Thank goodness you came. Mama's been confused lately. She gets these wild ideas. We were just trying to keep her from hurting herself. Then Mr. Harris barged in and... Lies. I cried out, my voice cutting through her story like a blade. I stumbled forward, pointing at Sarah and David. They tried to kill me, Sheriff. They turned on the gas. They dug a hole outside. They attacked Mr. Harris. Look at him. He nearly died saving me. The sheriff's flashlight caught the glint of the knife in Sarah's hand. His jaw tightened. Put that down. Now. Sarah hesitated, her eyes darting between me, David, and the sheriff. David stepped in, his voice shaking but defiant. Sheriff, you don't understand. She's old. She doesn't know what she's saying. But then Lily, tears streaming down her face, shouted. It's true. I saw everything. They tried to tie Mama up with a rope, and Sarah wanted to stab her. They were going to bury her in the yard. The sheriff's flashlight swung back to Sarah and David. His eyes narrowed dangerously. Is that true? The room went silent except for the howling wind outside. Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line. David's fists clenched at his sides. Their silence was louder than any words they could have spoken. The sheriff took a slow, firm step inside. His hand hovered near the gun on his belt. If either of you move wrong, I swear by the Lord above, you'll regret it. Step away from your mother. Now. The storm cracked outside just as Sarah lifted the knife above her head. Her face twisted in rage. For a split second the whole room froze. Mr. Harris groaning on the floor, David's eyes wide with panic, Lily clutching me tighter, and Sheriff Collins steadying his stance. Don't do it, Sarah, the sheriff bellowed, his hand gripping the holster at his side. Put it down or I'll have no choice. But Sarah's eyes burned wild, unrecognizable. She's ruined everything, she screamed, her voice breaking. If Mama won't give us what's ours, then no one will have it. She swung the knife down. Bang! The gunshot split the storm. The sound was so loud my ears rang, drowning out Lily's scream and David's cry of horror. For a moment I couldn't breathe. My heart stopped. The knife clattered to the wooden floor, sliding across the room. Sarah staggered backward, her eyes wide with shock, clutching her shoulder. Blood spread quickly through the fabric of her blouse as she collapsed against the wall, gasping. Sarah! David shouted, rushing to her side. The sheriff's gun smoked faintly in his hand. His face was hard as stone. I warned you, he said, his voice low and steady. You forced my hand. Sarah whimpered, her face pale. David looked up, his eyes blazing with fury. You shot my sister. You'll pay for this. He lunged toward the sheriff, but before he could take more than a step, the sheriff swung the butt of his gun and cracked it hard across David's jaw. David dropped to the floor, dazed and groaning. The storm roared as silence fell inside the house. My knees gave way, and I sank to the floor, clutching Lily as tightly as I could. My body shook so badly I could barely speak. The sheriff lowered his weapon but kept his eyes sharp. Mrs. Margaret, he said firmly, you're safe now. I'll get back up here immediately. These two won't hurt you again. But my tears kept flowing as I looked at Sarah slumped against the wall, her blood dripping onto the floorboards. My firstborn, my baby girl. She had turned into my enemy, and now she was bleeding in front of me. Why, Sarah? I whispered through my sobs. Why did you do this to me? I gave you everything, everything. Her lips trembled as she looked at me with glassy eyes. And then in a voice so faint I could barely hear it over the storm, she whispered 4 words that froze my blood colder than the rain outside. You were never enough. You were never enough. Those 4 words cut deeper than the knife ever could. My heart sank like a stone in water. My own daughter, the child I carried, nursed, and loved with every fiber of my being, looked at me with hate in her eyes, even as blood soaked through her blouse. My lips trembled. Sarah. I whispered, my tears hot and endless. All my life I lived for you. How could you say that? But Sarah only turned her face away, pressing her hand against the wound on her shoulder. David crouched beside her, his face twisted with anger. Don't talk to her, Mama. Look what you let happen. Look what he did to her. He glared at Sheriff Collins, his jaw tight, his body trembling with rage. The sheriff kept his weapon raised, his voice steady. She gave me no choice, boy. Don't make the same mistake she did. For a moment the room was still except for the storm. Then I noticed Mr. Harris, weakly pushing himself upright. Blood streaked down his face, but his eyes were sharp with determination. Sheriff, they were going to kill her, he rasped, pointing a shaky finger at Sarah and David. I saw it all. You've got to lock them up. Sarah let out a bitter laugh, low and sharp even in her pain. You think you've won, old man? This isn't over. As long as Mama's alive, none of you are safe. Her words chilled me to the bone. Lily sobbed against my chest. I stroked her hair, whispering prayers under my breath. The sheriff pulled out his radio, his voice firm as he called for backup. I need units at the Johnson residence. Immediate. Hostile suspects, 1 injured. Secure transport. His eyes never left Sarah and David as he spoke. But David wasn't done. He suddenly sprang to his feet, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. You're not taking us anywhere, he shouted. His hands darted toward the dresser, where the flashlight, heavy and metal, still lay hidden in the shadows. David, no. I cried out. In one swift motion, he snatched it up and swung it toward the sheriff with every ounce of his strength. The sheriff ducked, but the flashlight smashed into the lamp behind him, shattering it in a burst of sparks and glass. The room plunged into near darkness, the storm outside throwing jagged flashes of light through the windows. In the chaos, I heard Sarah's voice, low and urgent. Run, David. Run. My heart stopped. They weren't finished. They were planning something worse. And then I saw it. The back door swinging open in the wind. David grabbed Sarah by the arm. And before the sheriff could react, they stumbled toward the darkness outside. The wind howled through the open back door, carrying the sound of rushing rain and cracking thunder. My breath caught in my throat as I watched David drag Sarah into the storm. Her injured arm bleeding but her eyes burning with defiance. Stop them! I cried, my voice trembling. Sheriff Collins cursed under his breath and bolted toward the door, his boots pounding on the wooden floor. He paused just long enough to glance back at me. Stay with the girl, Mrs. Margaret. Don't move. But I couldn't sit still. My children, my flesh and blood, were running into the night like fugitives. My heart tore between wanting to protect them and knowing the danger they carried with them. Sheriff, please, I whispered, but my words were lost in the roar of the storm. Lily clung to me, her small arms wrapping tighter around my waist. Grandma, don't let them take us too, she sobbed. Her tears burned against my dress. Mr. Harris groaned, trying to push himself up again. They can't get away, he wheezed. If they do, someone else will pay the price. His warning rang sharp in my ears. I stumbled toward the door, the rain slapping against my skin like icy knives. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the figures of Sarah and David stumbling across the muddy field behind the house. Sarah's dress clung to her like a second skin, the blood mixing with the rain as David half carried her forward. Sarah. David. I screamed into the night. My voice cracked, swallowed by thunder. Come back. Please come back. But they didn't stop. Not even once. Sheriff Collins darted after them, his hat whipping off in the wind, his pistol drawn. His voice boomed across the storm. Stop. In the name of the law. They only moved faster. David glanced back, his eyes catching mine for a split second. In that flash of lightning, I saw no trace of the little boy I once rocked to sleep. His face was twisted with fury and desperation. The sheriff fired a warning shot into the air. The crack echoed like cannon fire. The horses in the neighboring field neighed wildly, stomping in panic. But still, my children didn't stop. Suddenly, Sarah slipped in the mud. She cried out, collapsing into the muck, her blood mixing with the rainwater. David yanked her up, but her strength was fading fast. He screamed at her, his voice ragged. "Get up! Don't quit on me now!" The sheriff closed the distance, his boots splashing in the mud, his gun steady. For a moment, it seemed like he might catch them. And then, another figure appeared from the shadows of the trees. A tall man in a dark raincoat, his face hidden beneath a wide hat. He moved with purpose, reaching out to grab Sarah before she fell again. My heart dropped. Because I recognized him. Even through the storm, even through the years, I knew that face. It was Thomas. My husband. The man I thought was dead. Lightning lit up the night sky. And for that single blinding second, his face was clear as day. Thomas. My husband. The man who was supposed to be lying in a grave 6 feet deep. The man I mourned, cried for, and built my life around his absence. The man I believed was gone forever. Now stood alive before me in the storm, his hand gripping Sarah's arm with cold authority. I froze in the doorway, my breath choking in my chest. "Thomas," I whispered, my voice trembling so badly it didn't even sound like my own. It can't be." Sarah staggered against him, her eyes wild with pain and triumph. "She knows," she hissed at him. "She finally knows." Thomas turned his head slowly, and his eyes met mine across the field. They were the same eyes that once looked at me with love on our wedding day, but now they were dark, unreadable, and full of secrets. The sheriff raised his gun higher. "Who the hell are you?" he shouted over the roar of the storm. "Step away from the girl." But Thomas didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled Sarah closer, shielding her as though she were his precious prize. His voice was calm, almost chillingly calm when he spoke. "Lower your weapon, Sheriff. You don't understand what's happening here." "I understand enough," Sheriff Collins barked back. "You're aiding fugitives. Don't test me." David stumbled to Thomas's side, gripping his shoulder like a lost child. "Father!" His voice cracked, full of desperation. "We thought you'd never come back." The ground seemed to tilt beneath me. My knees threatened to give way. "Father." David had called him father. But how? I staggered forward into the rain, my hand clutching the doorway for balance. No, that's not possible," I whispered. My tears mixed with the storm, blurring everything, but not enough to hide the truth. "Thomas, you're supposed to be dead." For the first time, Thomas smiled. A sharp, bitter smile that made my stomach twist. "Dead?"
No, Margaret.
"I was never dead. I was just forgotten." The word slammed into me like a hammer. My heart raced, my breath ragged. Forgotten? What did he mean? Sarah, clinging to him despite her wound, turned her face toward me. Her voice was weak but full of venom. "Mama, you never asked the right questions. That's why you never saw the truth." The sheriff edged closer, gun still aimed. "I'm giving you one last chance," he growled. "Step away from the kids. Now." Thomas didn't move. Instead, he looked straight at me, his eyes narrowing. "You trusted the wrong people, Margaret. And that's why your deepest pain is only just beginning." Before the sheriff could react, Thomas reached into his coat and pulled out something metallic that gleamed under the lightning. The lightning flashed again, and in Thomas's hand, I saw it clearly. A revolver. Not just any gun, it was his gun. The very same one I had buried with his belongings when I thought he was dead. My chest tightened, my breath snagging in my throat. The past and present collided in one horrifying instant. The sheriff stiffened, his own pistol cocked. "Drop it!" Collins roared, his voice cutting through the thunder. "Drop the weapon now!" But Thomas didn't move. He stood tall in the rain, his hat dripping, his hand steady as if the storm didn't touch him. Sarah leaned weakly against him, her blood mixing with the mud, her eyes locked on me with a cruel spark. David hovered at his side, torn between fear and loyalty. My knees threatened to give out. My husband alive. My children on his side. And me standing in the doorway, powerless. Thomas? I whispered again, my voice raw. Why? Why hide? Why let us suffer all these years thinking you were gone? His gaze shifted back to me, piercing, sharp as a blade. Because you trusted the wrong people, Margaret. You let them twist everything. You let them bury me alive in lies. My heart pounded. His words wrapped around me like chains, dragging me into questions I didn't dare ask. Who had lied? Who had hidden him? The sheriff tried stepping closer, his gun unwavering. I won't tell you again. Drop the gun or I'll shoot. Thomas gave a slow, mocking laugh, the kind that made my blood run cold. You think you're in control here, Sheriff? No. You've been a pawn from the very beginning. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Lightning cracked again. For a second, everything froze in stark white light. Thomas with his gun raised, the sheriff ready to fire, Sarah hanging on with blood-soaked fingers, David trembling, torn between both worlds, and me, paralyzed with horror. Then, without warning, Thomas fired. The gunshot exploded through the storm. Lily screamed from behind me, clutching my dress tighter. My ears rang, the world spinning. But it wasn't the sheriff who fell. It was Mr. Harris, standing just behind him, his chest blooming red, his face twisting in shock before he collapsed into the mud. No. I screamed, the sound tearing out of me like an animal's cry. The sheriff dove for cover, returning fire. Bullets cut through the rain, mud splashing everywhere. Sarah shrieked, David ducked, and Thomas pulled her down with him, shielding her with his body. I grabbed Lily and pulled her inside, slamming the back door shut, my heart hammering against my ribs. The gunfire outside raged, thunder and bullets mixing into one endless roar. And in that chaos, one chilling thought clawed its way through my mind. If Thomas had been alive all this time, then everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. The house shook with every shot fired. The sound of bullets tearing through the storm was deafening, rattling the windows, shaking the ground, and sending fear clawing through my bones. Lily clung to me so tightly I could barely breathe, her small frame trembling like a leaf in the wind. Mama, she whispered, her voice breaking. Are we going to die? I swallowed hard, pressing her face into my chest. No, baby, no. I won't let anything happen to you. But the words felt like lies on my tongue, heavy and empty, because outside the truth was unraveling, and I was losing control. The sheriff's shouts echoed in the yard, cut through by the crack of Thomas's revolver. Somewhere in the chaos, David's voice cried out, Father, stop! Please stop! But Thomas didn't stop. Each shot he fired seemed to carry years of anger, years of secrets, years of betrayal I couldn't yet understand. I peeked through the window, my heart racing. Mr. Harris's lifeless body lay sprawled in the mud, the rain washing his blood into the earth. Sheriff Collins crouched behind the wagon, firing back whenever Thomas revealed himself. Sparks flew as bullets struck metal. Sarah lay in the dirt, weak but alive, while Thomas shielded her like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. Margaret! Sheriff Collins's voice bellowed through the storm. Get the children out the back. Run to town. Town. Safety. Escape. My eyes darted to Lily, to the back door, to the dark woods stretching beyond. For a moment I almost moved, almost grabbed her hand and ran into the storm. But then I saw David, my son, standing in the open. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was standing with Thomas, staring at me through the chaos with wide, desperate eyes. His lips moved, trembling with words I couldn't hear over the thunder and gunfire. Come, he seemed to be saying. Come with us. My heart cracked. My boy, my flesh and blood, torn between me and the man who had just killed an innocent man in cold blood. Another bullet whizzed past, splintering the wood near the window, forcing me to duck down. Lily screamed again, clutching me tighter. I had seconds to decide. Run to safety with Lily, or step outside into the gunfire to reach David before Thomas pulled him completely into his world. I pressed my forehead to the door, my tears mixing with the rain seeping through the cracks. God help me, I whispered, my voice shaking. Help me choose. And then, the front window shattered. Glass exploded inward as a figure burst through, landing hard on the kitchen floor with mud and blood dripping from their clothes. I screamed, pulling Lily back. My heart nearly stopped when I saw who it was. Sarah. She was inside my home now, her face pale, her eyes wild, blood soaking her side. And in her hand she held a knife. The storm outside faded for a moment, drowned out by the pounding of my heart. Sarah lay sprawled across the kitchen floor, her dress soaked in rain and blood, her knife gleaming even in the dim light. Her chest rose and fell in sharp, shallow breaths, but her eyes burned with something fierce and poisonous. Lily screamed, clutching me tighter. "Mama! Stay back!" I pushed Lily behind me, my arms shaking as I grabbed the nearest thing I could find. A cast iron skillet from the stove. My hands trembled, but I held it tight like a shield. Sarah coughed, spitting blood onto the floor, then pushed herself up with the strength of someone running on pure hate. You think he loves you?" she hissed, her voice breaking with pain. "No, he loves me. He's always loved me. That's why he came back, for me, not you." Her words stabbed deeper than her knife ever could. My knees nearly gave out, but I forced myself to stand firm. "You're lying," I spat, though my voice cracked. "You're lying because you've lost. You're desperate." Her lips curled into a twisted smile. "Lost?" she whispered, dragging herself closer across the floor, the knife leaving trails of mud and blood.
No, Margaret.
"You lost the moment you trusted him. The people you thought would protect you. They chose me." The words hit me like thunder, each syllable clawing at the fragile hope inside me. Was she telling the truth? Did Thomas really come back for her? Lily whimpered behind me, her small hands clutching my dress. That sound, my daughter's fear, snapped me back. I couldn't let Sarah's poison break me. "Stay where you are," I warned, raising the skillet higher. "Or I swear I'll." But I didn't get to finish. With a sudden burst of strength, Sarah lunged at me, knife raised high. The sound of her scream mixed with the storm, raw and wild. I swung the skillet with all my strength. The iron struck with a sickening crack, and Sarah's body crumpled to the floor, the knife clattering out of her hand. For a moment, I thought it was over. But then she moved. Her bloodied fingers dragged toward the knife, her breath ragged, her eyes still burning with hate. Before I could react, the back door slammed open. And there he was. Thomas. Standing in the doorway, revolver in hand, rain dripping from his hat. His gaze fell on Sarah bleeding on my floor, then to me, standing over her with the skillet. His eyes narrowed, unreadable, dangerous. "Margaret," he said slowly, his voice low and heavy. "Put it down." The storm howled through the open back door, whipping rain into the kitchen. The dim firelight flickered against Thomas's face, making his eyes look even darker, sharper. His revolver pointed straight at me, steady and cold, while Sarah writhed weakly at his feet, trying to reach her knife. Lily clung to my dress, her sobs muffled against my back. My arms ached from holding the skillet, but I refused to let it drop. If I dropped it, I was defenseless. "Thomas," I whispered, my voice shaking. "You don't have to do this." His jaw tightened, his eyes never leaving me. "Step away, Margaret. Put the skillet down. I won't ask again." I swallowed hard, every muscle in my body trembling. "If you want me dead," I said, forcing the words past the lump in my throat, "then you'll have to shoot me in front of your own daughter." I shifted slightly so Lily's terrified face peeked out from behind me. For the first time his hand wavered. Just a flicker. A crack in the armor. But Sarah groaned, coughing blood. "Thomas," she rasped. "Don't let her fool you. She tried to kill me. She wants you all to herself." His eyes darted down to her, then back to me. Torn. The rain roared louder, thunder rattled the house, and for a heartbeat everything froze. Until a shout cut through the storm. "Thomas." It was Sheriff Collins. His voice thundered outside the front porch. "It's over. Let the woman and children go. Don't make me end this." Thomas's grip on the revolver tightened again. His jaw clenched, his chest heaved, and his gaze bore into mine like he was searching for something. An answer, a reason, maybe forgiveness. "I never wanted it this way," he muttered under his breath, almost to himself. "But you left me no choice." Then, the kitchen door creaked open slowly. Another figure stepped inside, soaked by the rain. David. My son. His face was pale, his clothes muddy, but his eyes were sharp. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Sarah. He only looked at Thomas. "Father," David said firmly, his voice trembling but strong. Put the gun down. Thomas turned slightly toward him, his revolver still aimed in my direction. Son, this isn't your fight. Yes, it is, David replied, stepping further into the room. His voice cracked with emotion. Because I won't let you hurt her anymore. The storm roared, Sarah whimpered. Lily clutched me tighter, and for a moment, everything hung in the balance, until Thomas slowly shifted the revolver away from me and pointed it at David. No, I screamed, stepping forward without thinking, but Thomas's cold glare froze me in place. His revolver was trained on David's chest, his fingers steady on the trigger. David didn't flinch. His shoulders shook, but his eyes locked on his father with a strange calm. If you're going to shoot me, then do it, he said quietly. But at least I'll die knowing I stood up to you. Thomas's face twitched, a war raging behind his eyes. Rain dripped from his hat brim onto the floor, the only sound apart from the thunder outside and Sarah's raspy breathing. You think you're a man now? Thomas growled, his voice low and dangerous. You think standing against me makes you strong? David swallowed hard but didn't look away. No, father, he said, voice breaking. What makes me strong is protecting them. From you. Lily whimpered behind me, and I could feel her small fingers digging into my back. My heart hammered so loudly I thought it might burst. Thomas's jaw clenched, his finger tightening on the trigger. For a second, I thought it was the end. I nearly dropped the skillet, ready to throw myself between them. But then a sound cut through the storm. Click. The unmistakable sound of a rifle being cocked. From the doorway behind Thomas, Sheriff Collins stood tall, his shotgun leveled at Thomas's back. His hat dripped with rain, his eyes hard as steel. Drop it, Thomas, the sheriff barked. His voice carried no hesitation, no mercy. It's over. Thomas's breath came fast, his revolver still aimed at David. His eyes darted between his son, me, Sarah bleeding on the floor, and the sheriff in the doorway. I said drop it. Collins roared. For a moment, I thought Thomas would listen. His hand trembled, the revolver lowering just slightly. My lungs filled with hope. Until Sarah, with the last of her strength, croaked from the floor. Don't you dare give up, Thomas. Finish it. Her poisonous words lit a fire in him. With a snarl, Thomas jerked the revolver upward, aiming not at David, not at me, but at the sheriff. No. I screamed again, rushing forward. The next moment exploded with chaos. A gunshot cracked through the storm. The house shook with the sound. Someone fell. And for a split second I couldn't breathe. I didn't know who had been shot. The thunder rolled in the distance. But inside that kitchen, silence swallowed us whole. My ears rang from the blast, the smell of gunpowder thick in the air. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then I saw it. The revolver slipped from Thomas's hand, clattering onto the floorboards. His eyes went wide, his mouth twisted in shock, and a dark stain spread across his shirt. He staggered, his knees buckling beneath him. It was Thomas who had been shot. The sheriff's shotgun still smoked, his stance unbroken, his eyes fixed coldly on the man he had just put down. Thomas gasped, clutching at his chest, his body rocking forward and back like a man trying to fight death itself. His gaze darted to me, then to David, then finally to Sarah, who was still sprawled on the floor, her face pale but her eyes burning with rage. You betrayed me, Thomas rasped, coughing blood. His voice cracked, jagged with pain. Sarah dragged herself a little closer to him, her fingers clawing at the floorboards. No, she hissed, her voice trembling with venom. She betrayed you. Don't you dare die looking at me. Look at her. Her blood-stained hand lifted weakly, pointing at me. Thomas's eyes flickered to me one last time. For the briefest moment, I thought I saw regret, something soft, something broken. But then his body gave way. He collapsed forward, face first into the muddy rainwater that had seeped across the floor. Lily screamed, burying her face in my dress. David froze, staring at the lifeless body of the man who had been both his father and his greatest fear. The sheriff lowered his shotgun, his voice steady but grim. It's over. But it wasn't. Because as Thomas lay dead, Sarah let out a sound that froze my blood. It wasn't a cry of sorrow. It was laughter, low, bitter, and unhinged. She pressed her bloody hand to her stomach, coughing between each twisted chuckle. Her eyes gleamed like a woman who had nothing left to lose. You think it's over? She spat, glaring up at me. No, Margaret. You killed him. And I swear on his grave, I'll take everything you love. I'll burn your world to ash. Her words were a curse, soaked in venom, and even the storm outside seemed to shudder. Then her body went limp, her head dropping to the floor. For a long time no one spoke. The storm howled, the fire cracked, and Thomas's body lay still. But Sarah's last words hung in the air like a dagger waiting to fall. And deep in my bones I knew, this wasn't the end. For days after Thomas's death, the house felt hollow, as if the very walls carried his ghost. Sheriff Collins arranged for Thomas's burial without ceremony. And though the town whispered, no one wept. But Sarah did not die that night. She survived. Her wounds were grave, yet her rage was fiercer than her pain. They carried her to the county jail, her body broken but her eyes alive with a fire that terrified me more than Thomas's revolver ever had. I visited once, to see if the curse in her words had been only madness. She sat on the edge of her cot, her pale face stretched into a smile that made my skin crawl. You think you're free now, Margaret? She whispered, leaning close to the bars. You think killing him gave you peace? No. I'll make sure you never sleep without fear. I'll rot your happiness from the inside. Mark me. I never visited her again. But her poison worked its way into my life. Every night, I heard her laughter in my dreams. Every time the floor creaked, or a shadow flickered in the corner, I thought of her threat. Months passed. The children tried to find joy again. Lily played with her dolls. David began working at the blacksmith shop, strong and steady. Yet even in their smiles, I saw the scar Sarah had left on all of us. One evening, as the sun dipped low, a letter arrived at my door. No name, no return address, just my name scrawled in jagged ink. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a single line. I warned you. I'm closer than you think. My knees buckled. The paper slipped from my hands. Sarah had escaped. Somewhere out there, she was watching, waiting, plotting. And as I tell you this story now, from my little home here in Kentucky, USA, at the age of 76, I can still feel her eyes on me. Friends, if you followed this story to the end, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the notification button so you don't miss more of my upcoming stories. And tell me, from which part of the country are you watching? I'd love to know. Because the lesson I've carried all these years is this. Sometimes the people you trust to protect you are the very ones who cause your deepest pain. And when betrayal cuts that deep, it never truly heals. The storm may pass, but the thunder always echoes.